Welcome back. Another episode of the Whole Nine Yards here on a Wednesday night. Going to talk about last week's NFL games. One of, if not the most interesting week so far. I honestly can say that almost every single game has something noteworthy in it. We'll start off here, though, with Browns-Titans. Browns ended up proving me and Brandon wrong, at least so far. They went on to beat the Tennessee Titans 41-35. It was an absolutely dominant first half from basically everybody in the Browns. Baker Mayfield especially, he had an insane day, arguably is the best game of his career. At least this was in a moment where he had so many doubters, so it meant so much more. 25 for 33, 300 yards, four touchdowns. The running game actually, I mean, it wasn't even like the normal Browns day where it's like Mayfield's not good. The Browns running game gets them barely past some team that's not that good. Chubb only had 80 yards. Kareem Hunt only had 33. Like, they didn't run that much. The second half is a little bit of a different story. The Browns weren't nearly as good in the second half. The Titans they didn't almost make a comeback, but they were kind of close, I guess. They ended up just playing a lot better in the second half than the Browns did. I think they got to the point where they scored a touchdown with 35 seconds left in the game or something like that.
Yeah, they had a chance to get the ball back.
Yeah, and I mean, they didn't get the onside kick. And even if they did, they probably a Hail Mary at best, realistically speaking. So, yeah, I mean, what are your reactions off this game? What do you take from it?
Yeah, I think we both went into it thinking the same thing, which was the Titans were going to win, and probably pretty convincingly, which it was the complete opposite. It was the Browns who won pretty easily, and the final score doesn't really show what happened in the game. It was basically a blowout the entire game, and then that's just what happens in NFL games. Teams come back in the second half, but it's mostly just because you're not like playing press. You're mostly just playing. Yeah, your defensive backs are playing back, and that's just what happens. Like like once you go into halftime and it's like a blowout, almost every team just comes back to make it close. But um, yeah, I was pretty surprised. You're right. Like the running game was good, but they really didn't need it. Like the way Baker played in the first half was amazing, and I think when going into this week, most people thought the Browns of being like a decent team, not a great team. And with this win, this is their first, like, I would say, like, real win of the season against a top team, or at least a upper half team in the AFC. And they're now a real threat in the playoffs. I would say I would still have the Titans over them when looking at it in the whole picture, but they're for real now, unlike they were just before going into the week. And they're going to be a tough out for whoever they play. Right now, they are scheduled to play the Titans in the first round, and I think it'd kind of be like this game. It wouldn't be a blowout, but it'd be a really interesting game to see which running game would be better. Because I don't think Baker would play like this again. I'd be pretty surprised if he did, but I think it'd be the two running backs with Chubb and Henry. Be who'd have the better day, and whoever had the better day that team would most likely come out on top.
Baker had an unreal day. I'm not ready to go to where you went, which is like they're a legitimate team, like more legitimate than before. Sure. Are they? I mean, I would love if I was a division winner team, I would be very content with playing the Browns in the wild card. I'd rather play the Browns than either AFC South team as of right now. I'd rather play the Browns than the Ravens. I think I don't know. Like, I'd probably rather play the Raiders right now,
Oh,
just because the
definitely.
Raiders have been so inconsistent. But the Raiders have had higher highs for sure. At least in my opinion. I don't know.
I
Maybe
think
maybe
they've had lower lows though.
yeah, definitely. And the Dolphins. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that you've had to play the Browns and the Dolphins, like, other than this one week. What can I take from this game that I see the Browns consistently doing? Baker Mayfield going 25 for 33, 330 yards and four touchdowns. I don't see that being consistent now. Maybe he's going to start picking up a little bit from here, but still, the running game is going to have to bring this team playoff victories. It's not going to be Mayfield. and this game wasn't that. I'd much rather like now. Okay, if Mayfield can do this every week, then cool. I mean, you just got yourself like a top 5 quarterback. But assuming he can't do this every week, I want to see the Browns running game be able to translate into more convincing wins, just because beating the Jaguars 27-25 or whatever it was, like that's not convincing. Even if your running game goes off for 200 yards, if you only win by two points every single week, like I don't really care. Their defense, I'm not in love with their defense at all. I mean, you got Myles Garrett, but other than that, it can be slim pickings at times, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I see what you're saying, and I think I wasn't saying like they're a completely legitimate team. They're just more up there than they were before. And if their running game can stay in what it's been and afford Mayfield just to do play action, and he's not going to put this up every week. He's just not going to, and he's going to make mistakes when it comes down to the playoffs. But if he could just work off the play action and the run game can work because they have a really good offensive line, then they have a real shot because their defense isn't great, but it's good enough to hold teams. And depending on who they would play in the playoffs, I think they'd have a really good shot, at least in the first round. I don't know about second round, but at least in the first round.
Yeah, I still think that this AFC conference in general, maybe it's better than the NFC, but I'm still not in love with a lot of teams that some expert analysts or whatever may be in love with. Like I'm still not high on the Bills. I'm not really high on the Dolphins. I'm not the only team I'm actually high on is the Chiefs, and I mean everybody's high on the Chiefs. So it's a weird conference to me. So the Browns definitely have a chance to win a wild card round. Maybe they even win the divisional. If they play the Steelers in the divisional round, I mean, I don't know. Like, would you be super surprised to see the Browns win? Maybe I would be. I mean, it depends on the matchup. But if they made it to the conference finals, I wouldn't, or the conference championship, I wouldn't be super shocked. I mean, are they going to beat the Chiefs? I would be shocked if they did that. That would be shocking. Yeah. But
I wouldn't be surprised either, I guess, if they made it to the championship game. But it would have to be like they'd have to be going for like 200 yards a game on the ground, and they'd have to be playing great defense. Like they would have no other way to get there but that, and good matchups along the way. But they'd have to run into the Steelers, the Chiefs, in the second round anyway. So they have a better shot against the Steelers, I would say. But either way, it's not. I wouldn't pick them in either game.
Yeah, looking at the Titans, this is just as big of a game for the Titans as it was the Browns. They now, because the Colts now, they're both tied at 8-4 in the division. And this is now, again, this is anybody's division. I mean, I know you picked the Colts to win the division a couple weeks ago, whatever it was. I picked the Titans. I really thought the Titans were going to win this game. I was surprised they didn't. And I have to reevaluate the Titans at this point. Their defense, I don't know how to feel about it. I don't feel that great about it. And I don't feel great about Ryan Tannehill. Never have, probably never will at this point. So
I'm definitely higher on him than you are. I mean, I like the Titans. You're right. Like I like the Colts better. I think I like the Colts better just for a couple different reasons. But just to keep it short, at least just talking about this game, you're right. Their defense has been a problem, and this game it clearly showed. They were terrible. They had no chance of stopping Baker, which it's kind of like just a one-off game. I don't really see this happening to their defense again, but against a good offense, I think against like the Bills or obviously the Chiefs and the Colts, I think they could easily get torched defensively. And I don't know if you're not winning, if you don't have a lead in the game, then your run game doesn't work, and then it's all on Tannehill, which is where he's not his best. So one of those three matchups, they're gonna have a really hard time because they're not gonna be able to keep up offensively with how they play, and the defense won't be able to stop the other team's offense.
Yeah, I'm at the point in the AFC where I almost feel like it's the Chiefs and everybody else. Like I could see the Browns beating the Titans. I could see the Titans beating the Browns. I could see the Dolphins beating the Titans. I don't know. I don't even know what to expect in the playoffs. I'm not going to be surprised by any result except for the Chiefs not making it to the Super Bowl. I just think Bills, Dolphins, Raiders, maybe not Raiders, Browns, Ravens, Titans, Colts, you could all throw in this, and this, they're all equal to me. Like they're all about the same. Not necessarily in play style, but in just how good they are.
I
I
actually
don't
like.
feel
Well, I was gonna say I actually like the Bills more than you do. I think they're probably the second or third best team.
yeah, in my opinion, that's just maybe they are the second or third best team, but I also think that the Titans could be the second or third best team. I also think the Steelers could be the second. Like I just think they're all in this. For me, they're all in this just this bag and or this hat, and I can just reach down and pick one at random, and that's my best team right now, other than the Chiefs. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the best team is. Maybe it's the Bills, but I still don't feel great about the Bills defense, and I don't feel great about Josh Allen even still. So we'll move on though. We'll move on to the next game here, and it was an upset to say the least. The Washington football team ended up beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. Brandon, I'll get your initial reactions on that.
Yeah, well, we both picked them in the game for the spread, but I don't think either of us thought that they were going to win the game. But I think it was a bad matchup for the Steelers in that they're playing a really good defensive front, and the Steelers have no running game. And when you can't have that mixture of run, I forget what it was in passing it was, let's see, it was 53 pass attempts to 21 rushing attempts or 14 rushing attempts. I mean, and it's not like they were losing the entire game. They had a 14-0 lead. So if you can't have a balance between your run game and your pass game, you're never going to be able to have a consistent offense and one that a defense is not going to be able to lock in on what you're doing because they know you're going to be passing the ball. And even when I know Connor wasn't playing, but even when he comes back, they still don't run the ball. And even when they do run the ball, they don't run it effectively anyways. So against teams with really good defensive fronts and even a good front seven, they're going to really struggle. Which is why they were a fraudulent 11-0 team. I don't think anyone thought they were like a real 11-0 team, and which is why I think everyone also had the Chiefs just way above them, despite the Chiefs having a loss and the Steelers were undefeated before. But now that they had this loss, I think I guess we have to look at the schedules, but I would say they probably lose that one seed, which is going to really hurt because their bye was week 4 because of the COVID stuff. So they really haven't had a bye basically the entire year, kind of. And you can say, like, from the Thanksgiving game, they kind of had one, but they basically are going to play 3 games in, like, 12 days or something like that, 14 days. So it's going to be tough if they don't get that one seed.
The Steelers really needed the bye. They really needed the bye more than any other team in the AFC, especially because they're just not as good as the Chiefs. For any chance for them to make the Super Bowl, I definitely think that they needed that bye. I don't see them beating the Chiefs, especially if it's an Arrowhead. So it's a horrible loss for the Steelers. And I've never been, but I don't think both of us have been like high on the Steelers or whatever, at least
No.
comparative speaking to their record. Yeah, the running game, they're not even trying. Maybe that was the right call, but I definitely don't think so. They had like 14 rushing attempts, one of them being a quarterback sneak, I want to
Yeah.
say. So,
And they
when you're
threw the
up
ball
14,
53 times.
what team throws 53 times while having a 14-0 lead?
Yeah.
Maybe maybe I don't know. There's not many teams that do that. If
There's maybe Seattle.
in today's NFL, yeah, and in historically, the only teams that would do that are the most dominant throwing teams of all time. Maybe like I don't know, like the 2013 Broncos or something. Maybe like the 2007 Pat. I don't know, maybe, but even then, that's
Even
just
still, though.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. If they can't run the ball, they're not gonna do that well in the playoffs, at least in my opinion, or they'll have to get really lucky to do well. And yeah, it just brings me back to the same point where I still think that this AFC, it's a lot of like decent teams, but I'm not, other than the Chiefs, I'm not willing to like objectively say that one is better than the other at this point. So yeah,
Yeah, their defense really hurts without Devin Bush and Bud Dupree.
Yeah, those are two huge injuries, especially also super late in the year, which is unfortunate.
And the guy
Uh,
got to replace Bush is out for the year too. So
yeah. It, yeah. Looking at the football team though, I mean, this makes the division super, I mean, it makes it much more interesting. You've got the Giants and the Washington football team. I would say those are the only two teams that can win the division at this point, really.
yeah,
Realistically speaking, I mean, the Giants have probably played better. I don't know, but it makes it super interesting because both of these teams, they just had great wins, but at bottom line, they're still both 5-7. I would not be surprised to see them come back to earth even just a little bit. I mean, the Giants' schedule is very tough, and I don't want to get into the division stuff too much right now, but the Giants' schedule is pretty tough last 4 weeks. Cardinals, Browns, Ravens, Cowboys. Other than the Cowboys, I mean, they could go 0-3 the next 3 weeks, and I mean that's what that might be what I would bet on for them to go 0-3. Like so, I mean, it's going to be tough. And with Washington, their schedule's not too much easier. They go 49ers, Seattle, then Panthers. So, I mean, I could honestly see Washington winning this division. I mean, that win is just so big for them that they have a path for sure.
yeah. Without that win, it would have been a lot tougher, especially since the Giants won. They would have been a loss behind, just in general. But then they're basically like 1.5 games behind because they have two losses against the Giants. So
Yeah.
that was a huge win for everything. Because if they lose that game, I mean, the Giants have a tough schedule, but I I would probably pick the Giants at that point. And right now, it's honestly a tie between the two teams.
I think I would be tempted to pick Washington, but I ultimately might lean Giants because I think they're probably the better team. But Washington has a much easier schedule. Like, I mean, I think all Washington would have to do is probably go 2-2 to win this division from here on out.
Yeah, like they could lose these next two games and then beat Panthers, beat Eagles, and finish 7-9. And I guess you have to hope the Giants would go 0-3 in their next three games, which they could. But
They easily could. They really easily
the thing
could.
is, they're playing a Cardinals team that's pretty banged up. At least Murray is. So
Yeah, I mean they are, but the Cardinals are they card. I mean the Cardinals
that's
need to
really the
get
game.
back on track. That's the thing, and that's why it's tough for me to say that the Giants are going to win that game. But yeah,
Well, I guess who do you trust between the quarterbacks, just Smith or Jones,
well,
for these last four games? Because Jones, they said he's going to come back this week. So
honestly, I kind of lean. Who do I trust more? I mean, I lean Smith.
I do too.
I just think it comes down to turnovers. Who has potential to play better? I mean, I think Jones has the higher ceiling to play better in these last 4 games, but honestly, not by much, if at all. If somebody said that they think Alex Smith has a higher ceiling for these last 4 games, I'm not going to disagree. I'm not high on Jones in general. I don't know what you think though.
Uh, yeah, he just hasn't shown it yet. I would say. Um, I think yeah, you're right. I would say ceiling's definitely high, but what he's shown, so I can only judge on what he's shown, and it hasn't been much. So, like, I would agree. I would go Smith. I would say he's not going to turn the ball over. He's played in big games before. He's been on championship level teams. So even though he's had the injury, he's not the same guy. It's not the same player, but I'd probably go Smith.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely go Smith. I think the Giants probably have a better overall roster, but even then, I don't know. It's debatable. The Giants or Washington definitely, I would say, has a better at least defensive line. But
But the Giants
yeah,
have been really good defensively overall too. So
yeah. All right, we'll move on. Well, I don't even know if you want to call it moving on, but we'll go to Giants Seahawks. I mean, it was probably the most surprising game to me. I just wasn't anticipating the Giants to come out and play like this. I mean, you can probably tell from our videos that I mean, neither of us have thought the Giants are necessarily better than their record. And at this point, you could potentially argue they are better than a any 5-7 team. Uh, I mean, what were your reactions from this game?
Yeah, it was surprising, definitely. I think we didn't talk about it, but just in talking off camera and stuff, we just thought that the Seahawks were definitely going to win this game at home. New York going there without Jones, it just seemed like they were gonna kind of not blow them out, but they were definitely gonna be up
I
by
mean, yeah,
two
I was like, I
touchdowns.
thought it was, I thought it was going to be like one of those regular games that nobody cares about. It's a 2 touchdown game.
Yeah,
Seattle wins 28-14, and nobody, and just move on.
and it's like, yeah, that was expected. No quarterback in Seattle, like that was just the expectation. But that's really not what it was. It was a great performance by their defense, and I mean their offense didn't have to do much. When they had the opportunity to score, they scored, and that's all they needed. Seattle did not play well. Metcalf was pretty much shut down. He was 5 for 80. Going against Bradbury, he was probably going to be a Pro Bowler, maybe an All Pro, who knows, for the Giants. So they're, like we were just saying, their defense is really good, and if they can keep playing at this level, they have a shot because your offense really only has to score, 20 to 25 points if your defense is going to play like this. So if they can continue to perform like this, then it's going to be hard not to choose them or have them not be a playoff team. Which there could be two teams from the NFC East in the playoffs. By the way, they
Yeah,
could shape up like that.
it would be. I would be still at this point very surprised, but it's possible. Which, you
With the
know,
way that them and Washington are playing, and the Cardinals have been struggling, you have the Vikings there in that. And there's one of those in that last spot. Then you have the Bears and the Lions and the Niners. I don't think anyone thinks that they're gonna jump into those spots. So it's definitely possible that Washington and the Giants could get in.
I mean, I think for them to get in, they'd have to go 8.
They
I don't think a 7-9 team makes the wild card, but I could be wrong.
It could. I mean, the Vikings are only 6-6. Same with the Cardinals. So
Yeah, I would be surprised to see them both two teams make the playoffs. But I mean, a month ago we would have said it was impossible because a month ago the
definitely,
Giants had one win. The Giants haven't actually lost since they lost to the Bucks 25-23 over a month ago, which is, I mean, it was 5 weeks ago. That's pretty crazy to think, honestly.
yeah.
I mean, have they played any other than the Seahawks? I mean, they haven't played super legitimate competition, but they beat the they beat the Washington football team, they beat the Eagles, beat the Bengals. So, I mean, yeah, I was definitely, I can't say I was definitely wrong on Joe Judge. I mean, we haven't talked about him necessarily on the podcast yet, but as a Pats fan, I was like, I don't like this hire. It's the same. It's going to be the same thing as all the other Belichick guys. He was like a special teams coordinator type of guy. He was never, he hasn't had any actual legitimate responsibility so far in the league. And I mean, he's proven me wrong right now. He was proving me right earlier on in the year, but I mean, they have won 4 straight, and Judge looks like a solid head coach. Jason Garrett's been a very solid offensive coordinator so far. I mean, yeah, this team, I mean, on air, I remember saying this a while ago. I mean, I said that I would pick the NFC East winner over whoever they play. And if it's the Giants, I mean, hey, like that take's not looking like the worst take ever. So,
Yeah, because they'd probably play. I mean, right now they play Seattle again, so and that'd be in New York. So that'd be a tough game. I think that Seattle's really. I think the Giants have found a way to get after them defensively, and that's really the only way to stop Seattle. Because as long as you put up 20 points against them, because that defense is terrible. Like if you can get somehow 25 points against Seattle, you're probably winning that game if your defense can perform somewhat like they did. Now, obviously, I mean, I'd expect Wilson to play better, but if they can get 25 points, again, this is looking into the future, but if the Giants were to score 25 points, I'd probably say that they'd win that game though.
yeah, I mean, that's the problem is they have to actually score 25. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
you're right.
think,
That could be tough.
honestly, I think the Seahawks are honestly one of their worst draws out of the teams that could be there. I don't know what you would say. Like, I mean, they beat the
Um,
Seahawks, but would you rather play the Seahawks or the Rams if you're the Giants?
Honestly, I think I may go Seattle only because their defense is so bad that you at least have a shot offensively to put up points. Again, I think against the Rams, I think off like against the Rams, I think you'd rather face the Rams offense than the Seahawks offense. Just because I think Goff can turn the ball over kind of whenever. Yeah, he always has those like 2 or 3 turnovers a game, which obviously is going to cost you. While I think Wilson is a little bit more conservative, at least he tries to be, but he has to make so many plays that sometimes he just makes turnovers. But I think defensively, you'd much rather go against Seattle's defense than the Rams defense, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Rams defense is one of the best in the league. They have a really insane secondary, but I mean, here's the question: is the Seahawks defense bad enough? And I don't know because I don't think the Seahawks defense has been as bad as it was earlier in the year. And I think it's hard to keep up that bad of a pace defensively, but I'll just go off points for the last month ish. They let 23 up to the Rams, 21 to the Cardinals, 17 to the Eagles. And I mean, they lost against the Giants, but they only let up 17 points. So,
Well, the only thing I'll say is that they played the Giants. They played the Giants without Daniel Jones. I mean, no one's expecting them to put up any points. They played the Eagles. I mean, they're a mess, and that was a touchdown late. It was really not. It was like really like 9 points. I mean, the Eagles are just a mess. And then they played the Cardinals with an injured Murray. So I'm not trying to make like an excuse. Like they obviously played well enough to stop them defensively, but the teams they played had flaws offensively. And if you look at the games before, I mean, 44 against the Bills, 27 against the Niners, 37 against the Cardinals with a healthy Murray. So I think they're better defensively. They got Adams back and Dunlap started playing for them, but I would still say they're a bottom tier defense and they can easily get exposed. I
yeah,
mean,
I would agree with bottom tier defense easily exposed. If this was the playoff matchup today, would you pick the Giants or?
with the way their defense has been playing, I mean, yeah, I'd probably pick them.
I think I'd still go Seattle. I'm just scared to pick the Giants. Again, to go back to the Daniel Jones thing, he's going to be the one starting most, like 99%, unless he gets injured or something in that playoff game. Yeah, I'm not a big Jones guy.
I mean, I don't know how confident I would be in the pick, but I mean, defenses win, so and they have a much better defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, like I said, it's not, my take wasn't the worst take, but yeah, I'm still scared of the Giants. Like, I still
When it,
don't,
when it comes to like a big game or something.
yeah, and I still don't know. I mean, Joe Judge has coached well the past 4 games, but overall in the year, he hasn't been a great coach at all times. I'm still not in love with Judge right now. We'll see. I will see how it plays out. But yeah, I still think I'd go Seahawks. I mean, you'd have to hope they get some. I mean, so at this point, is it gonna either be the Rams or the Seahawks? Is that how it's looking? I'd have to check.
The Bucks are 7-5, and the Seahawks and the Rams are both 8-4. So, I mean, it seems like it'd probably be the Seahawks or the Rams, but I mean, the Bucks may get to. I mean, I would say 10 wins is probably that 5 spot. Uh, I'd be surprised. I mean, it could be 11, but I'd probably say 10-6 is the 5 spot, and it comes down between Seahawks Rams. I don't really see the Bucks going 4-0 to get that 5 spot, so
Yeah,
I'd probably say it's one of those two teams.
yeah, it's probably gonna end up being Seattle or Los Angeles. I mean, it's gonna whoever wins that divisions. I mean, they play on the 27th in Seattle, so I mean that's gonna be a huge
Yeah,
game.
that's probably the game for who's the 5 seed then.
Yeah, yeah. I wish it was the last game of the year. It kind of sucks that it isn't, but because it was last year when Seattle and San Fran played the last game of the year, right, for the
Yeah,
division. Yeah, that was a good game. Yeah, but I mean, second to last game of the year is good enough. We'll move on though. We'll move on to the Eagles and Packers, specifically a benching that occurred in this game. Carson. Jeez. Okay. We'll move on to. Okay. We'll move on from Giants Seahawks. We'll go over to a benching that occurred. Carson Wentz was benched in the game Eagles versus Packers. So the Packers ended up winning 30-16. And Wentz, I mean, he had a horrible game. He got benched, so I feel like that goes without saying. 6 for 15. I mean, he looked horrible. I mean, reactions off that benching.
Well, I texted you as soon as it happened that Wentz was going to be done for the season, probably. I said he was going to be done in Philly. That may have been an overreaction, but may also not have been. But I would say for the season, he's probably going to be on the bench unless Hurts really struggles or obviously gets injured. But I think I was like listening to some like Philly talk about the move, and they were saying that they just like he was a spark. He was just like a new energy into the offense, and I mean he played all right. Hurts did. He was 5 of 12, 109 yards, a touchdown, a pick. I think he had 30 yards rushing too. But I think he's just a different type of quarterback. Um, he's younger. He's probably not as afraid to make mistakes as it seems like Wentz was. It seems like he just was so cautious and so his decision making skills just took a turn for these last couple of years where he wasn't always great with the ball, but he was definitely pretty good with the ball and not having turnovers. And this year, I think he had like 15 picks or 14 picks and a couple fumbles. He was just terrible with the ball, and you could say it was offensive line, which I mean it definitely is. Their offensive line's terrible, but to have that many picks and fumbles, it's some of that's got to be on the quarterback too. So I think it was something that they needed to do, and it's not like they're going to make the playoffs anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But it's something that I think Doug Pederson's probably just trying to save his job, maybe, which I don't know what you think, but I would say he's probably fired at the end of the year anyways. No matter how good Hurts plays or what the record is at the end of the year, I would say he gets fired.
Yeah, Peterson's, in my opinion, is without a doubt gone. Even if they won out and made the playoffs somehow, he's still fired. Unless they, win a round and then win another round or something. But yeah, I'd fire Peterson. It seems like I guess he's trying to save his job with benching Wentz. Yeah, I'm definitely higher on Wentz. I'm higher on Wentz than a lot of people right now. Like I wasn't necessarily a big Wentz guy early on, but I think the Wentz slander has gotten slightly out of hand. I mean, at this point, I'm not like totally disagreeing with any points. I'm not even disagreeing at all on a lot of the points, but I still think Wentz has potential to be a top 10 quarterback in this league. I mean, he has potential to go back to what he was in 2017 or whatever it was when he was an MVP candidate. Will he ever win an MVP? Probably not, but I think he can be a top 5-ish quarterback at his ceiling. Maybe that's not right to say, but yeah, I don't know what it was in Philly. Wentz's mental is just horrible, at least in my opinion. Getting not benched for Foles, but when Foles went in and Foles won that Super Bowl, it seemed to affect Wentz so much. And yeah, I don't know what it is. And for some reason, whenever a different quarterback comes in for Wentz, like you said, I mean, you weren't referencing this, but every team, or they get a spark, and it just feels like they don't like Wentz or don't care for Wentz, or he's not leading them correctly. And I mean, that's an issue because your quarterback has to be a leader at the end of the day. He doesn't even have to be the best player. Like Foles has never been the most talented. Eli Manning was never the most talented, but they were leaders. And I mean, you're going to have a leader at that position to win a Super Bowl, unless it's a super fluky or something like that. But I mean, yeah, Wentz just hasn't shown those qualities. Super talented, but he's so afraid to make mistakes sometimes, and I mean that just leads into making mistakes. Uh, I don't know how to feel about Hurts. I don't think Hurts is a franchise quarterback, but yeah, I think it was a change of pace type of thing. Get Wentz on the bench. He's just been horrible. I would love to see a team make a move for Wentz in the offseason because
Yeah.
I think I'm at the point where I can probably agree with you. He might be done in Philly, and
Oh,
I'd rather
definitely.
see
Yeah.
Wentz. It would be so much more interesting to see Wentz in another uniform, and one of those teams actually would be the Patriots. Now, I haven't thought about it that much, but is that the quarterback I want them to go for? I don't know, but just from like a fan, like a football NFL fan perspective, I mean, I'd love to see Wentz in New England. In my opinion, he'd be much more interesting than Cam. Cam was interesting a little bit, but overall, Cam's been very boring this season. We know what Cam is. I mean, he's not going back to MVP form at all. Whereas Wentz is much younger. I mean, Wentz still has potential to be a very good quarterback in this league. If he plays like he has this year, he's going to be out of the league in 3 years. But yeah, I'd love to see. I mean, Belichick at the end of the day is a defensive coach, but I'd love to see what the Patriots organization does to Wentz. Is that going to transform him at all? How they handle him? I think that's out of any current NFL quarterback, that's the most interesting one to me.
Uh, I agree. He's definitely done in Philly. There's no way he could come back to being the starter or at least being like a star quarterback again. But you said the Patriots, which I hadn't heard before, but I think it's definitely an option. But I would say the Colts. I think the Colts are the number one option if he were to get moved. And he'd have to be traded. There's no way they'd cut him and take I think it's 60 million in dead cap. There's no way they'd
Yeah,
cut him. So the Colts would be perfect because their head coach is Frank Reich. He was the offensive coordinator in 2017 during his best season. He's the reason they won the Super Bowl, not Doug Pederson. And as soon as he left after 2017, you could see exactly why he was the reason why they won. And they have Philip Rivers right now. He's, I think, 38, 39, whatever he is. He's obviously not the option there. I think he signed a 2-year deal it was. And I mean, maybe they'd keep him for next year and then get Wentz, or they just get Wentz after this season. I don't know what they do if they even want to go down that path, but that'd be the perfect option because their team is ready to compete for a championship if they have the right quarterback. They have a great defense, and their offense isn't great, but if you have a quarterback like Wentz and if he can return back to what he was in 2017 or at least similar to that, maybe not MVP level, but top 10 level, then I would say that team's going to be that would be one of the best teams in the AFC and probably the NFL.
yeah, I
But
100% agree on that. I mean, if you have a top 10 quarterback in that Colts team, and hopefully, I'd love to see the Colts get some more skill, whether it be probably on the outside. I still don't love their receivers, but yeah, I mean, Wentz on that team would be awesome as well. I'd love to see that. Now, I mean, Reich would have to get into Wentz again and get him back to that shape. I don't know that it happens. For some reason, I don't know why I wasn't even that high on Wentz before. I never really was, but I was definitely a Wentz over Prescott guy. And I mean, in the beginning, that looked like that was the somewhat obvious answer, just because Wentz was like an MVP frontrunner for like 14 weeks in a season. But I mean, ever since then, basically, it's been clear that Prescott has played better. He's been the better guy. So I've definitely been wrong on that. Uh, but now, I mean, we're at an interesting point because Wentz, we don't know what's going on. He's played horrible. Prescott, I mean, he's probably coming back and he'll probably end up being just as good. But yeah, I mean, for some reason, I still feel like is going to come back and he's going to end up being a top 10 guy.
I would say I would say so also, not on Philly, but for another team. I would say, I mean, it has to be the right situation, but I was more of a, I mean, obviously I'm a Cowboys fan, so I would say I was more of a Dak over Wentz guy. From the beginning, honestly. I mean, if you look at the rookie years, obviously Dak was amazing, offensive rookie of the year, but even throughout those last couple of years, I was always more Dak over Wentz, and I think they kind of had the same situations. I would say Dak always had the better options at like receiver and running back, but I mean, Wentz had Ertz, he had Alshon, he had Deshaun Jackson, he had decent running backs, and they both always had really good offensive lines. And then when the offensive lines went, it seemed like Wentz got worse. You can't say that the Philly offensive line is worse than the Cowboy offensive line. So, and Dak was always putting up numbers and was always consistent while Wentz was just getting worse and worse. And he has an injury history. Obviously, Dak, just got injured, but he
As a
made
freak
every
act, I mean, that's not happening
yeah,
anymore.
like that, and he made every single start before that. So, and Wentz has always missed starts. So it's definitely something where I was way more Dak over Wentz, and people always make the argument, and I hate it that he had better receivers and running backs and everything. But it was really a lot closer than most people were saying it was, and you could see that once things went bad, Dak was just more consistent than Wentz was.
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me to take one right now, I'm probably taking Dak. I mean, I am, but if you said to me in 3 years, one of these quarterbacks will win an MVP, which one do you think it's more likely to be? I would probably say Wentz.
I probably would too.
Like, I think Dak will probably be a top 10 guy for a good amount of time. I don't know that he's ever going to be top five, maybe for like a stretch, maybe for a year. He's a top five. He gets some MVP votes and stuff like that. But yeah, I
He's
mean, I
not
think
he's not as talented as Wentz is.
yeah, I think we know what Dak is. And I mean, the tricky thing about that is I mean, that contract, I mean, this is totally off topic, but that contract it's very tough to handle because all these like not MVP quarterbacks, but still top 10. I mean, they all want top three quarterback money. I mean, that's what Prescott's wanted since day one. And it's the question of like, do you overpay for this guy? Because if you were to give Dak now, that's just not going to happen because of the injury. But before this, if you were to give Dak that like whatever 40 Patrick Mahomes or Watson type of contract, I mean, there's a 90% chance that that's an overpay, 95% chance. And yeah, I mean, it's a difficult call. Like, are you willing to almost guarantee you're going to overpay for somebody? But it's the quarterback, so it's also the most important position in the league. At least recently, we've seen that the best formula, if you want to call it, for Super Bowls is, have the quarterback on a cheap rookie contract, so you're able to spend elsewhere to build a formidable roster. And the teams that do win Super Bowls with quarterbacks typically that are paid are typically top three guys in the league. Like, for example, Matt Ryan, he never won a Super Bowl. He never won a Super Bowl. Stafford's been one of those guys. A lot of quarterbacks are kind of like in that top 10-ish category that have been overpaid historically. So, yeah, we'll wrap it up, though. We'll move on to my team, the Patriots. I mean, it was a wild game, to say the least. It was over from like almost the first 7 minutes or something like that. Like, the Patriots won 45-0. I guess I would start off saying that, in my opinion, the Chargers lost this, and this is a stupid thing to say, but the Chargers lost this game more than the Patriots won this game. Special team, I mean, it just comes down to special teams mainly. I want to say they had 12 people, they had the wrong amount of people on the field 5 times on special teams, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Gunnar Olszewski had a punt return for a touchdown. I wish we reacted to this Sunday night, but it's Wednesday. But yeah, it was, the Chargers played horribly, and this is a game. The Patriots are 6-6. We'll get into their playoff hopes in a little bit, but just to react to this game solely, I just can't take much away from it. This is a classic. This hasn't happened this year at all, basically, but it's a classic Belichick game and Brady game where it's like, all right, we're gonna just sit back and let the other team beat themselves, and that's exactly what happened. Lynn's gone after this year. Wouldn't even be. I mean, I'm surprised he's not even gone. Yeah, losing 45-0 to this not very talented Patriots team it's bad. Newton didn't have to play well. I mean, I guess you could say he did play well. He did his job. 12 for 19, 70 yards passing, and 1 touchdown. I mean, he did what he had to do. There was nothing to do there. Like, when the Chargers beat themselves, there's not much you can do as an offense. Harris still looks great to me. Harris had 16 carries for 80 yards. To me, Harris is the best running back on this Patriots offense, at least pure running talent. I'd love to see him develop a pass-catching game. I just think at the end of the day, running backs that can catch the ball and run the ball are not only better, obviously, being versatile is great, but it allows the offense to have more creativity, and it keeps the defense much more honest. When we have somebody like James White in the backfield, it's almost certainly a pass, and he's not nearly as good in the running game as a lot of other running backs. So you will hand it off to him to keep the defense honest. But I mean, it's just flat out, he's not as talented as a running back, pure running back, as a Harris, even necessarily a Michelle or a Burkhead. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it just came down to the Chargers beat themselves. The defense, the defense played very well. But how surprised can I be? It was a shutout, so I can be pretty surprised. But it's Herbert. Herbert's a young quarterback. I think it's fairly common knowledge that the Patriots and Belichick specifically, they dominate young quarterbacks. I want to say Belichick is 21-5 now after beating Herbert against, I don't know if it's rookie quarterback or quarterback under said age, but I heard that somewhere. Uh, yeah, I mean, the Chargers played horrible. Herbert was not good at all. Very that pick to Winovich was, I mean, it was a horrible pass. And yeah, I mean, Gilmore played well, played very well. There's not much for me to say other than the Chargers beat themselves and the Patriots let the Chargers beat themselves and didn't do anything to stop it.
Yeah, it was a classic Belichick game, like you said. You could just tell going into the game, it was the greatest coach of all time versus a terrible coach, and he knew exactly how it was going to play out, and it's exactly what happened. I don't think anyone saw 45-0, but you knew that he was just going to make Lynn and the Chargers make mistakes, and that's exactly what they did. They were terrible in this game. They had no clue what they were doing. They could not make any adjustments. I mean, I feel bad for Herbert. I mean, I'm a Herbert guy, and they're just doing nothing for him. The coaching staff is. And uh, the Patriots, they are 6-6, and they honestly have a shot at the playoffs, which is crazy to think about when you think just a couple weeks ago, and it seemed like they were done. They had no chance of even coming close to the playoffs, and now with their schedule, which is Rams tomorrow night, Thursday Night Football, then Dolphins in Miami, which is always tough for the Patriots, but that was with Brady. Who knows? Maybe it changes now that he's not there. And then they're home against the Bills, and then they're home against the Jets. So it's not impossible that they can make the playoffs. I don't think they will because Newton, he's just not. I mean, he only had 69 yards passing. He didn't need to pass in this game, but honestly, he really wouldn't. If this was like a close game, he probably wouldn't have put up a much better stat line than that. He is not a good thrower at all, and running the ball, like he can still run the ball, but I mean, how much trust you put in the offense with just him running the ball? I'm not sure how much you could do with that going down the stretch.
He had
Even
Demir. I think it was Demir Bird. He had open down the sideline, and he just underthrew it completely, and it was like a duck, it was a floating duck. I think it was. I think it was this week. And yeah, I mean Newton can't throw the ball, so the Patriots, for them to even have a chance, they have to win out.
yeah, which they could do. It's not impossible.
This game doesn't do anything. Yes, it is a win, which is huge because they have to win out. But does this game do anything for me to give me more confidence in the Patriots winning out? And my answer is no. Like, did they show me like the defense definitely played well. The defense is going to have to do that if they want to make the playoffs. Did the offense or the Patriots in general prove to me anything that is like, yes, I think this team will make the playoffs? And I don't know. There's nothing applicable. I just feel like this is a fluke. It's a fluke win. I mean, you're not going to win games 45-0, obviously. The offense didn't click or show me anything that was like, yep, they've got it. They found what they needed to find to get their identity to start convincingly winning games with, some sort of overall strategy or game plan. Yeah, I mean, this game doesn't do anything for me other than it's a W, and you're now 6-6. You only got to win 4 more, but yeah, I don't see them making the playoffs. There is still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that have better records than them that aren't division winners right now. The Dolphins, the Raiders, the Browns, the Ravens, and the Colts. So, and I wouldn't even be surprised if I would say the top 6 seeds could be 11-5 this year.
Yeah.
Or better, obviously. So I'm really saying the 5 and the 6 seed, which
Well,
hasn't. I mean,
the
it's
only hope is that I mean, right now they have wins over the Dolphins, the Raiders, and the Ravens. which helps if they were to get into a tiebreaker with any of those teams.
Yeah.
But they probably have to win out. I don't see them. If they're 9-7, I don't think they could. They
Nah,
definitely can't
there's
make the
no
playoffs.
way. There's just too many teams. There's too many teams right now that are just in the same territory. And the Patriots with the 6-6 record are behind everybody record wise. I don't see it happening. I really don't. I mean, I don't know if you feel any. I mean, yeah, you don't feel any differently.
Yeah, I don't think offensively they could put up enough points to where they could go 4-0 because despite how good their defense is playing and how good it can play, they're gonna have to put up points, and I don't have faith in Newton to put up like more than 25 points, which is crazy to say because they just scored 45, but that wasn't because of the offense. That was because of
Yeah,
special teams and defense.
like you'd figure in the next 4 games, the Patriots defense will allow over 20 points in one of those games.
Yeah,
I don't think the Patriots are consistently capable of scoring more than 20 points. And that's horrible to say, but it's true. Before the Chargers game, they won 20-17 against the Cardinals. They only put up 20 against the Texans, 23 against the Ravens, 30 against the Jets. I mean, it's the Jets. 21 against the Bills, 6 against the Niners. I mean, this is going back a while, but I mean, 12 against the Broncos. I mean, I don't know. Like and I know Cam Newton didn't 10 against the Chiefs, and Cam Newton didn't play that game. But still, I mean, this offense it's just horrible. And that's ultimately going to be the reason they don't make the playoffs. If Brady's on this roster, I mean, do you think they make the playoffs?
no, no,
I
they
think there's
still
a
don't have
chance.
like
I don't know that
they
they
were
do,
six and
but
six. You mean, or from the start of the season?
from the start of the season.
No, I would say their team offensively is worse than it was last year, and
I would
that's
agree.
that's saying something.
I
And
would agree.
you can see the way he plays in Tampa. Like even with all those weapons, he still isn't great. So I would say no way.
I would say right now they probably, if they had Brady, I think there's a chance that they're 7-5 or 8-4.
I would I would say at best 7-5. I couldn't see them being 8-4.
Well,
They'd
if
have to
Brady
like get
plays,
they'd have to get like lucky wins for them to be 8-4.
if Brady plays, then he doesn't miss that Chiefs game, and I think he probably
They're
win
still
that
not winning that
Broncos game
game.
as well.
They're not winning that Chiefs game.
They, in my opinion, I think they definitely would win that Chiefs game.
I think you're putting too much like faith in Brady to.
Did you
There's no way.
Hoyer? That was some of the worst quarterback play I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and
There's a chance that they win that game with Cam Newton in there. At the time, that's
at the
definitely how I
time
felt.
at the time, I mean Newton's playing really well at that point, but I don't think so.
I think with Brady, they win that game. I think with Brady, they win that Broncos game. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. I think with Brady, there's a chance to win that Bills game. If you go back to that game, when that was the game that Newton fumbled the game away. I mean, I'm not saying they make the playoffs, but I'm saying I think there's a chance that they'd be 7-5 or 8-4.
I don't disagree on 7-5, but I think that's at best.
I mean, you think they have a chance to be worse than 6-6?
No, I mean I'd say probably 5-7 would be their worst, but like you still have Brady, but it's not like they have no weapons. Like, and I mean Newton I think he has 11 rushing touchdowns. Like Brady wouldn't have 11 rushing touchdowns,
Well,
so
obviously not, but
it'd be better.
it'd be the running backs that have that 11 touchdowns, or Brady
I
would have more
mean,
of those through the air. I mean,
yeah, but it's not like he'd have so
Newton,
much more through
how
the
many
air.
passing touchdowns does Newton have? Let me check.
It's not like they'd be so much better through the air though. They'd obviously they'd be
He'd be
better, but they
better.
wouldn't be like
He'd be better, and that's
I
all
know
that
they
it would
wouldn't be
take
like
to be
completely
eight and
better.
four. He'd be objectively better
I
than
don't
Newton.
know. I
Newton's
don't.
pretty bad.
Newton has five. He has 5 touchdowns.
I would say Brady at worst is a slightly above average quarterback, and Newton at best is like a slightly below average quarterback. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
I just
say what you will.
I we're like kind of agreeing, but I think we're just disagreeing on where their ceiling would
Yeah.
be with Brady.
I mean, I think their ceiling is a playoff team that probably doesn't win the division and probably loses in the first round.
Yeah, I would say that would be the ceiling.
I'd say it'd be like
Like I
almost
think
similar. I think it'd be a slightly worse team than the year before because of the opt-outs, but it'd be the same thing. It'll be
uh,
Brady's not really bought in. I mean, this is like a. I won't get to it. I won't get into it. But it was. I mean, from being like a local fan or whatever, like you can tell that the Brady Belichick relationship was toast at that point. But yeah. But yeah, I mean that really wraps it up for this episode. Next episode will probably be out in a bit before the next week's games. We'll go over a bunch of stuff. We're probably going to go over some more topics from at least that developed this week. We're also going to be giving our, I guess if you want to call it like official playoff bracket predictions, but I mean, we kind of did the same thing a couple weeks ago and we're doing the same thing now. We'll just probably talk about a lot of the playoff picture. I mean, we've already kind of even touched on a little bit here, but the AFC, just like last time, there's a lot of things that could happen. And the NFC, when we were talking about it a couple weeks ago, we were like, yeah, I mean, we'd be very surprised if it was anything different than what we predicted. But I mean, it's definitely changed since then. That's for sure. At least, because of the Cardinals' demise or whatever.
yeah, that's probably the only one.
Yeah, it's probably the only one. But I mean, we also have, I mean, like at least the Rams and the Seahawks. I felt confident the Seahawks were going to win that division, but I don't know. I mean, I think the Rams are definitely the favorites right now.
Uh, I think it's close.
I think it's close, but I'd say the Rams are the favorites. I don't know, but I mean,
I'd probably like the Rams more, but it's pretty close.
yeah.
But
Uh,
we'll get into it though. It will be our official predictions. So whatever
yeah.
we say is what I mean. That's at least officially what we think is going to happen. Will it happen? Probably not, but that's at least what we're going to say.
Yeah, I mean, at least we'll get the first, I mean, we'll get some, I mean, we'll get more teams right than wrong just because, I mean, that's like easy, but like it's a given that the Chiefs and Steelers and Bills are making the playoffs at this point, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, anything to say before we wrap this episode up?
No, I think that was it. We're probably just like we've been saying the last couple of episodes. Football till their season's done. It's going to be basically all football, but when basketball starts, we'll talk about that a little bit, and then baseball. There's a couple free agents have signed so far, but none of the big ones yet. So when that happens, we'll definitely talk about it.
Yeah. All right. We will see you guys in a few days.